Okay, in this video, we get some more practice doing harder formal proofs in FOL. What I want you to do is pause your videos and see if you can figure out this proof. Then we'll talk about the answer. Okay, that was your chance to do the proof. Let's talk about the answer. What do you notice first when you look at this proof? Well, the thing that I notice are the main connectives. I see that I have a wide scope universal premise. Now that's helpful. I know how to do universal elim on this, but it's not immediately apparent to me what name I should instantiate this for, or how it would be helpful to instantiate this for the name A versus B or anything else. So I'm not exactly sure what to do yet just by looking at the premise. That's why I look at the conclusion too. Now, when you look at this conclusion, I want to know, what do you think? Do you think this is an existential sentence, and so I need to think about my existential rules? I hope the answer is no, because this is not an existential sentence. This is a negation. Look at the main connective, the thing that's the widest scope. So hopefully your Boolean knowledge, the Boolean light bulb in your head went off and you thought, okay, this is a wide scope negation. I should be thinking about doing a reductio, not worrying about that existential quantifier in the conclusion and what that might or might not tell me. So this is the first thing you should think when you look at this proof. I need to start a reductio. You even know what symbol goes down here in the second to last line, i.e. the last line of this subproof. You know this is going to be a contradiction symbol, and we're now on track. We are now have our eyes out for proving a contradiction. That's our new plan, because that's how we're going to finish the reductio and therefore justify the final conclusion. So once you set this up, now you need to look at this with fresh eyes and think, okay, now what do I have as a premise? I've of course got my universal quantifier here, but I also have an existential quantifier for you. And there's a really handy rule that I think you need to like put on a post-it note and put on the wall next to your computer, which is when you have premises of both types of quantifier, you have some universals and some existential, use the existential one first, and you'll see in a minute why that's so. So if you want to use the existential quantifier, that's your existential elim rule. And that should immediately tell you what to do. I need to assume an arbitrary name n and put a formula next to it. If you weren't sure whether to put a formula next to this, you need to go back to the intro video and think, okay, anytime you do an existential elim proof, you put something next to this here. You only leave this blank and you only leave at n alone up there in the assumption line when you're doing universal intro, but that's not what we're doing here. We're doing existential elim. So the structure of this is exactly what's inside the scope of this, with my arbitrary name replacing all of the variable that the existential quantifier is binding. Okay, now once we have that, there's a couple of different good ways we could have proceeded, because now you've got several good things that you know how to use. You know how to use a conjunction. You know to just bring down the conjuncts. So I can bring down P of n. You also know how to use this universal quantifier. I can instantiate it for my name n. You see, now the reason we had to use the existential first was we needed to start talking about this arbitrary n before we knew what to instantiate the for all x claim for. We do it for n. If I would have done it for n outside of this subproof, we would have violated the rule that the arbitrary name is not allowed to appear anywhere outside of the subproof. So that's why you have to do existentials before universals. Now, I don't even have to bring down my Q, you can see, because all I need is the first part of this. So at a certain point, you need to start paying attention to how you're going to get that contradiction symbol. I was on track to get the contradiction symbol by figuring out how this universal claim, the thing that I instantiated the universal for, is going to contradict the information I have on line 3. And the not P of n is the only thing relevant there. So you have to notice that it's the wide scope disjunction that I can build just by knowing not P of n. And that's how I'm going to get the contradiction symbol. Now, how did I know that I even wanted a contradiction symbol on line 7? Because remember, I knew on line 8 I wanted a contradiction symbol from the outset. And when I started the existential elim proof, it's really helpful to ask yourself, what is the thing that I want on the last line of that proof? I want the thing on the last line of that proof on line 7, the same thing I want on line 8. I'm just going to export it out of that proof. The only restriction is that that sentence on line 7 must lack the name n. Of course, the contradiction symbol is just a primitive symbol in our language, and that does lack the name n. That doesn't have any names in it. So I can export that whenever I need it. And the rule for that one is existential elim, citing my existential on line 2, and then the subproof on which I started boxing or assuming that arbitrary name n. So that's what finishes up this proof in its entirety. Okay, thanks, folks.